Hutner, and this is Coffee with Hx2. And today on our show, I will be speaking with Taylor Dunne and Eric Stewart. They're filmmakers making an incredible new film called Off Country, where they're looking at nuclear sites all over the U.S. and interviewing people, activists, people who live there, and people who've been impacted by the radiation and by nuclear weapons and that history. So welcome, Taylor and Eric. Nice to talk to you. So where are you right now? Where are you speaking to us from?
We're in Alamosa, Colorado.
We're about 2 hours north of Santa Fe.
And how far are you from Rocky Flats?
About 4 hours.
About 4 hours. So tell us about your film. It's called Off Country, and I know you're in the early phases of making it, but give us a synopsis of what the film's about.
So what we're doing is we are examining sites where nuclear weapons testing, manufacturing and storage, and we're interviewing anti-nuclear activists and also downwinders, communities who have been affected by the nuclear industry in these landscapes.
And we're also making an oral history project, and a major part of our focus is highlighting these underrepresented histories from communities outside of the Trinity test site to communities outside of Rocky Flats and the Nevada test site, to sort of shift the emphasis away from technology towards thinking about the people that have been impacted by it.
So are you, in your oral histories, are you using film, or are there only audio?
Well, I guess there's both, because what we're doing is taking all of the outtakes from the film, the whole interviews that we used, and we're putting those into the oral history archive. I think most of it will be audio and photographs. So. And
it's sort of a multimedia project where there'll be this film, and then there will also be these just radio pieces.
So what led you to want to work on this topic?
Well, we went to graduate school at CU Boulder, and that's very close to the site of the former Rocky Flats plant. And for me, I don't know, I started finding out about it. Like, we would drive by that site on our way to Golden, sometimes on our way to Arvada. And then when I started to learn about what happened there, I just was completely blown away, and also just shocked that suburbia, so the suburban Denver neighborhoods, are really creeping up really, really close to the site. And you know, there's housing developments that are really expensive. And I thought, wow, you know, it just was absurd to me that someone would spend $500,000 on a house that, you know, was right next to this highly toxic site where this, you know, pretty devastating history occurred.
So just to give our viewers a sense of what that is, not everyone knows what Rocky Flats is. So Rocky Flats is the former weapon site where they made 70,000 plutonium pits for all of our nuclear weapons. And it was an operation from the 50s through the 80s when it was shut down through the FBI agents, John Lipsky's work, and they shut it down. And one of the things they found there, and I'm sure you know this, but not everyone knows this, was that there was, you know, years and years of contamination that took place, 2 major fires and many, many more fires. And those plumes spread over Denver and over the community nearby and Arvada and so forth. And so we know from Kristen Iverson's book, Full Body Burden, where she has a lot of research on this, it's a really contaminated area. And so you went to school very nearby, and then you discovered that this was there and you were concerned. That's really interesting. And I know you were going to say more about that, Eric.
Well, another thing that kind of got us started was some of the members who started the Peace and Justice Center in Boulder, which was started in opposition to Rocky Flats. And it was sort of this grassroots community effort that really inspired us to sort of do more research, find out more, and see how we can contribute towards bringing environmental justice to that area, because it, you know, the whole manufacturing was incredibly toxic, and they really did an incredibly lackluster cleanup effort that leaves a lot to be desired. And they're just sweeping all of that under the rug with this absurd rebranding of it as a wildlife refuge and as an open park space. And so we're really interested in combating that narrative to bring back in that toxic, violent history.
And so what other sites are you going to beside Rocky Flats?
Well, we've spent a lot of time down by the Trinity site, so where the Trinity test was, and that was the first atomic bomb detonation. And so we've been going down there. That site's open twice a year. We've visited 3 times, and we've been interviewing a lot of downwinders of that site. So people who live in Carrizozo, Socorro, San Antonio, going and interviewing Tina Cordova and these downwinder activist groups who, because the Trinity test downwinders have never received any kind of recognition. So we've been collecting their stories. And then we're gearing up to go to Utah and Nevada. That's the one, we've spent a lot of time at Trinity, quite a bit of time at Rocky Flats, but we're doing research and getting ready to go out to Utah and to interview some of the Nevada test site downwinders.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us one particularly powerful story that you've heard that you could share with us?
Sure. Do you want to go?
Yeah. Well, so a lot of the people who've lived around the Trinity test site, and they call themselves the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium, and they have not been recognized at all or compensated in any way. And we've heard from this woman, Laura, about she's from Texas. She met her husband, who was born in Alamogordo, who died at the age of 43 from really bizarre, rare form of cancer. And she's had her daughters. They've done genetic testing, and they've discovered mutated genes. And so she talks about after her husband died, she just on her own started doing research into the area, and she got connected really just through Googling stuff to Tina Cordova and the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium. And every year she drives from Houston all the way up to Tularosa to protest the opening of the Trinity test site. Mm-hmm. And it's just so kind of tragic what's happened to her husband and what's been passed on down to her daughters, but also incredibly impactful and empowering the way that she's connected with Tina. And they're going to be testifying before Congress in December for coverage under the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. So that's just one of the stories that is heartbreaking, but also inspiring, the way that they're trying to build more justice for future communities.
Will you be going to any Native American communities where there's uranium mining issues?
Yeah, we would really, really like to do that. We're trying to, it's taken us a long time, communicating with Tularosa downwinders and and gaining trust.
Right.
And that's what we've been working on this film for 3 years. And I feel like finally we're in a position where people are seeing what we're doing and what we're up to. And we would love to do that if we can find, access to that. And I think that we will. It's just these things take a long time. So.
Yeah.
It's just a really long history of communities in New Mexico being taken advantage from companies doing mining, but also the mainstream media has covered these stories in a way that hasn't empowered these communities. And so we're working pretty hard. And like Taylor said, it's taken us 3 years to build trust. And we're sort of making inroads and slowly looking at the really awful legacy of uranium mining in New Mexico's pueblos.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this sort of denial of this information? I mean, we're looking right now. We're going head to head with Korea, and so it's in the media, which it hasn't been for many years, the subject of nuclear weapons and concerns about that. But this summer I was there, and I know many people who, I'm sure many people were there at the UN. We had the treaty that was written to make it illegal to have nuclear weapons. Now, not the US and the nuclear nations didn't sign on, but 122 nations signed on. So there was kind of and there continues to be a conversation finally, right, to really address this. And then recently one of the groups and several of the people involved with that treaty won the Nobel Peace Prize. And they're going to see the Pope. I don't know if you know this, but a group of them are going to meet with the Pope. And he clearly supports this abolition of nuclear weapons. So why do you think and how do you think your film is going to enter that conversation, and why is it so important?
Well, we're really with all this rhetoric that's flying around, also combined with the fact that we're sort of at the crossroads of the beginning of this renewal program for the nuclear weapons stockpile, and they're gearing up to produce plutonium pits at Los Alamos National Labs. For the first time since Rocky Flats was closed, they want to do industrial pit production. And so those two elements combined are really dangerous and scary. And it's really it's a really an amazing moment and a terrifying moment with the Nobel Peace Prize and everything, that it's so amazing to see the way that people are still fighting for more justice and responsibility and accountability, sort of like coupled with this new just hyperinflated rhetoric and this push from a lot of lobbyists and politicians in New Mexico who are hot to trot to collect those trillions that they promised towards renewal.
Yeah, and I think our project, what we're hoping to do is take a lot of these untold, unheard, unrecognized histories from 20th century nuclear industry, and hopefully get them heard before this 21st century round.
Yeah, and it's our main contention that the 20th century was a nuclear disaster, and at every level, from mining to testing to storage, it resulted in nothing but widespread irresponsible contamination. And we want to show people that it's not utopian Star Trek scientists that are managing these technologies. It's political and economic motivations. And with the new neoliberalization of the nuclear complex, there's no reason to suspect that responsibility and clear-headedness will prevail in the 21st century.
So who is your audience for the film?
Well, this is kind of an interesting question because this is, it's a very big project. It's a multimedia project. And we come from, we're artists. We make like non-traditional, untraditional documentary films. So I think the film is going to be, it's not like a documentary channel film, right? It's slow, it's shot on 16 millimeter. But so that audience is, I don't think it's going to be as broad as the multimedia archive. Like, we're producing a whole series of podcasts, these radio documentaries, and the hopes to reach an even larger audience.
Mm-hmm.
And we want people here to know. I mean, it's amazing the level of just people just don't know. Like, it's amazing. Like, we talk to people who live outside of Rocky Flats and they have no idea what happened there. And it's even amazing in New Mexico and here that there's just really zero public perception of the dangers of what's going on, because the mainstream narrative is that the Cold War ended and we stopped nuclear weapons production. We're sort of at the tail end of that history. And we're really interested in reaching a far audience in the Southwest, but also nationally and internationally, to talk about how this is contemporary history, this is ongoing. There are sites that need to be rehabilitated, and we need to not just make the same mistakes that we did in the past.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. What made you, we're going to close in a minute, but I'm curious why you chose to make it in 16 millimeter film.
Well, we work in 16. We just do. That's our medium of choice. I mean, we have the camera. This is the way that we work. And then do you want to talk about the connection?
Well, it's a little bit insane to shoot. We don't think it's insane, but it is sort of a curiosity that we're working in black and white 16 millimeter. It is the sort of medium of choice. That's just how I work as an artist and how I like to express myself. But we're also trying to make sort of a deeper critique that we're using black and white on the one hand to make a connection to the early 20th century records of nuclear weapons testing. All the footage we see is black and white for the most part, but also to connect to sort of the 20th century landscape photography genre as exemplified by Ansel Adams and people like that, because we're really trying to identify there are these two poles that define us as Western North Americans, and that's national parks and national sacrifice zones. And we're really trying to make that connection, that those are two poles of the same land use policy that is foundational to our identities as in the West.
And I think I also want to add that we are not, there's been some confusion about this, we are not including any of the footage of the bomb blast in the film. We don't want to spectacularize that, so that's not in the film. We're just going to be looking at these landscapes and hearing these stories.
Okay. Okay. Well, we have to end, but I am so excited to see the film and to talk to you more. And you spoke very eloquently at an important topic of the marriage of the national parks and national sacrifice zones. And just quickly, national sacrifice zones means an area is completely off limits, pretty much forever, right? With plutonium, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of years. So potentially beyond human existence, we have contaminated areas, and we continue to do so. And people don't know about it all. I have been around Rocky Flats, as you have, and what's remarkable there, as you describe, is there's this whole area which is terribly contaminated, and there's housing abutting it. And you can't tell, there's no signage, there's nothing there saying keep out, or this is dangerous, or and that's true for a lot of Superfund sites. You don't realize that it's there. And then there's that whole issue of forgetting. So film is a way of creating memory and bringing back. And those images are just beautiful. And we will be interspersing them, so our viewers are seeing them. I know you don't know this, but our viewers will be seeing them. So we're thrilled to have you on, and I hope to talk to you more soon. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've been speaking with Taylor and Eric, and they're making this incredible film in 16mm black and white footage of sacrifice zones, of ballistic missile areas where, you know, in Los Alamos, where the first weapons went off, well, Trinity site, and also Rocky Flats and other places where there are downwinders, and they're talking with those folks. So it's going to be a really interesting film, and their oral history project sounds fascinating. So this is Heidi Hutner. I'm Coffee with H2, and you can see more of our videos online. Thanks so much.
So when they detonated the bomb down there, he said it lit up brighter than any daylight he ever saw. He thought it was the end of the world.
You can't see it, we'll just have to hold. Okay. Next.
All right, well, we're at the Trinity site today on one of the 2 days a year that it's open to the public. This is the site of the very first detonation of a nuclear weapon on Earth, which is both special and horrifying when you think about it. And I'm big on history, and especially nuclear history. It's a very interesting part of the 20th century. And so I've been out here a couple times before. Every couple of years I try to get here. I came here from Tucson today. So this little concentration here, so you can hear a little more activity. And when they cleaned this up, all they did was they bulldozed it. So it just made it smaller and put it under the sand. So every time it rains, a little more comes to the surface. Most of it's green, but there's stuff that's black. Anything that the bomb was made of actually was up in the cloud and rained back down.
The bomb was a plutonium-based bomb, and it was a very inefficient bomb, and they packed it with about 13 pounds of plutonium, and only 3 pounds of it detonated, fissioned. The rest of it went up into that radioactive cloud, and the isotope of plutonium that we're dealing with has like a 24,000-year half-life. So the government has never been able to account for what happened to that 10 pounds of unfissioned plutonium. You know, where is it? How did it get deposited? And you just need one small particle of that to settle in your body, and it gives off radiation for the rest of your life. And in 1945, in July, women would have been harvesting fruit and vegetables and canning them, drying them, right, for the winter. There are lots of access points where people were exposed, and the government never gave anybody a warning before or after.